You're on.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Monday Night Live with Dr. Deb and Dr. Joe. We are so excited tonight to be here with these two crazy kids. We got a lot of crazy friends today.
We have a lot of friends.
We do, but we have fun.
Yeah.
If this is any indication, yes.
I love it. So we are super excited to have these two on, and I'm going to let my husband, Dr. Joe, do the honors.
It's funny. I have a unique availability to work with Stephen on a daily, well, not daily, but weekly basis. Often we get together. We do a lot of work in the chiropractic world. As he's the owner of Remarkable Practice, coaches over 300 chiropractors around the world, and has another great company called Chiro Matchmakers, where he's actually putting chiropractors into spaces where it's good for the doctor who's hiring and good for the doctor who's being hired. And his lovely wife has raised amazing kids, worked in the chiropractic office as well together for many years, had a successful high volume practice that put out a PVA. If you don't know what that is, that means patient visit average, where people stay with them over 300 visits, which is incredibly high in the world of chiropractic. In other words, once people got there, they understood what they were doing and why they were doing it. And they did it all around purpose, intention, and intellect, which brings us into tonight, because I think there is probably no two better people on the planet to kind of break this subject matter down than our dear friends, the Fransons. So welcome on, guys.
Yes, Camilla and Stephen, welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So great to be here.
What a gracious introduction. Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Dr. Deb. Thanks for asking us to be here. We're excited.
And we appreciate you being here. So, we have gone over, we're in the midst of the 7 pillars of a successful family. And we've had a lot of very successful, really power couples on breaking down their pillar to those who are listening, to the chiropractors, the chiropractic students, the families, patients of ours, friends from all over the world. And we've really been getting great feedback because they want to know the basics of how all of us do life. And we've handpicked each of you in areas that we really see you excel, although most of you excelling in all or most areas. But this is one of those areas that we see you guys really excel at a maximum level. And I would love to share how you go about living your life in such a way that it's done for a purpose, on purpose. Everything you do, whether it's raising your family or running your business or running your household, if you guys could share a little bit of that to start, that would be fantastic.
Great.
All right.
You want to get going?
Well, ladies first.
Oh. I think that, looking back at the past 16, almost 17 years that we've had kids, we can look at before children and after children, and it's been an incredible journey with lots and lots of lessons. There are seasons of a trial. There are seasons where you feel like everything is going pretty smoothly. But overall, I think that we are in a place where our 2 kids are the 2 people that we just love to spend the most time with. And we've always had the philosophy that we want to raise kids that we want to hang out with.
Great philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And, so far, so good.
I would say you guys have been successful at that so far.
I get the honor of going on vacation with you guys, and people ask me all the time, you go on vacation with families with kids? What are you, crazy? I'm like, no, you just don't get it. So, I think some people can confuse that statement and said, we like hanging out with our kids. It's funny because I couldn't agree more. I love hanging out with your kids. But the reality of it is that there is this parenting that still happens while you're still being close, right? And I think sometimes in the society today, that line is very blurred between what is being friendly with your child and then being a parent. Like we can speak to that at some point in time, because I think that gray line is all over the place. I see it all the time.
Yeah, it's. I think that's a tight wire. You know, it's a high wire act to try to navigate all the time, but you do have to be like really intentional. That's, I think, when it comes to parenting, like everything in life, you have to be really intentional. And Camilla and I are on the exact same page on how to navigate that. It's super tricky. You have to have your attachments in the right places. Like, you can't be attached to like your kids liking you all the time. You know, you're not your friends, you're not your kids' friends, right? So you're not their pal. And I can remember my dad doing such a great job of that. And I can remember as a young teenager just saying something to him where I was frustrated because he wouldn't let me do something or what have you. And I can remember telling him that some of my friends are, you know, they're friends with their dads. And I remember him looking at me and saying, your friends' dads are friends with their boys because they don't have the guts. And he didn't say guts, but they don't have the guts to be, the chops.
Probably,
to
right?
be their fathers, right? And I remember that, and it just really stuck with me. And I'm like, yeah, as a matter of fact, that's right. And I don't know where I read it or heard it, but you know, I know that kids need a policeman until they're like 17, and then they need a coach from 17 to 21, and then they need a friend after 21. And my dad's just been a really good role model there. So, you know, we were blessed to have just really good role models for our family, and now they're world-class grandparents. So, and I see that they've raised three fearless kids, and that's just continuing the legacy of great parenting. So, I can speak for myself in that my parents were great role models, and it taught me about being really deliberate and really intentional about everything, because it's super tricky. You know, whatever success we've enjoyed, don't confuse that with being perfect. We are far, far, far from perfect. We like to say remarkable does not imply perfect. The name of our business is The Remarkable Practice. And the premise of the Remarkable Practice is it's about having a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. And remember that remarkable does not imply perfect.
So in talking about remarkable, I would imagine that doesn't mean flying by the seat of your pants when it comes to making decisions for business or for your family.
No, it's very deliberate, and you know, we have our set of core values, and we always go back to those core values when we make decisions. Does this decision is it supported by our core values? Is it aligned with our core values? And we share that with our kids.
Every guest we've had on has literally brought that up.
Yeah.
And not just in our circle. I've had all people outside of our circle, but yet that is still the same premise around the table, around this whole chart, is that everybody's had this thing called core values. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Stu
Franson and Char.
Yeah, come on. And they're going to actually do an exercise to help break that down for everybody. So that's going to be the finale of the whole thing. So I'm super excited about that, because we've been talking about it and teasing it out and talking about it. And it's been literally the central theme inside almost every single one of these pillars.
Yeah, without even prompting it, everyone is talking about.
Well, here's the crazy thing is that, and you guys, you know, you live this as well, is like we look at how much time we spent, not even our kids are spending, how much time we spent in school and in traditional education. And you think about the things that weren't brought up, like core values. Now, granted, there was lots of modeling of core values, and that's really probably, as important. But it's amazing how it's a wasted opportunity that we just don't teach core values. You know, the idea of like being intentional about your core values, identifying your core values. You don't have to project core values on people, but you help them understand that core values, these are the things that are most important to you. And you don't have to press a 6-year-old or a 16-year-old to be able to recite their core values, but to help them create an awareness that you need to have an anchor. You need to have, you need to have some guardrails around your decisions that you're making in your life. And what we teach is, there needs to be alignment of 3 things. You need to align your core values, your vision story, and your behaviors. And, we've raised our kids like that. So they have a construct, an operational construct, and they're not looking outside for approval of their behaviors or outside for what's important and what matters most. They look inward because they have anchors that have been developed. Like, I know what my core values are. I know what my vision story is, which is my vision of success, which is the expression of my core values. And therefore, I have a sense, I have like this GPS system in my belly that tells me this behavior is either moving me towards the core values and towards my vision story or away from it. It's either in alignment or it's not. And that's like the greatest gift I think you can give any human being, never mind a child you're raising, is to give them a sense of those three things: your core values and your vision story and your behaviors. They all have to be in alignment for you to enjoy success.
And so, I think, and you brought up a great point there. So the vision story, I think sometimes people get desires and vision story mixed up, right? So I think what you want and what your story looks like, again, there's some gray in there. Mm. There's gray matter all over that. How have you guys worked through that, especially starting off a practice from the roots up, going in there, developing this team together as a couple, and then having children and bringing that into the mix, and then now moving on to the place where you sold your practice and created other businesses? It's a lot of layers of growth in there, but I'd love to hear some points on that.
Well, I think over the years, another concept that illustrates this is the concept of having boulders that are absolutes. And that is something that you develop over time, for sure. When you're young in life, young in practice, young in marriage, you're sort of fumbling around and trying to establish you. And what are some absolutes what are some ingredients that you absolutely require in your life? And those boulders, you put the boulders in place, and then the less important ingredients, that's like the gravel that you fill in the blanks, so to speak. And so, when it comes to raising our family, it's been very important for us to have a framework that we have sort of set in stone, and we have certain habits and a rhythm in our day that we don't mess with very much. So there's been like this consistency that we've developed over time, where, spontaneity, and Stephen is a master at explaining this, spontaneity is wonderful, but it has to still stay within a framework. And I think to raise children, that's very important. You have to have an established rhythm where they sort of know what's coming, what's expected. What does a day consist of? And
now more than ever, right? So yeah. We've seen so much disruption in this last 12 months. As human beings, we are rhythmic animals, right? So, look at the way the sun comes up, the sun goes down, right? We have winter, spring, fall. We have rhythms in our lives that, as human beings, there's a level of anticipation that we rely on, right? So we don't have to think about everything, right? So we can count on things. When people say, I'm going to be here, they're going to be there. We're going to do this at this time, then we're going to do it at this is the tradition. This is the thing that we follow. We're going to do things like go to school. We're going to go to church. This is our rhythm of our lives, and traditions, etc. All of those things are important structure for a kid so that they can enjoy the freedom that comes inside the structure. Right? It's like, why do you love watching a World Cup soccer match? It looks like it's a complete cat circus until somebody does something wrong, and then everybody in the stadium knows that somebody just misstepped and did something wrong. Even though it looks like mayhem, it's not mayhem. There's lines on the field, there's a clock, there's a couple of line judges that are calling plays, and there's strict rules, and there's a rhythm to that allows for the fun. It allows for all that energy. I think the same can be said of like our everyday. Is like there's so much freedom and structure. And I think when you have that kind of structure in your life, it creates the gaps, the margin that you need to be able to relax, to be able to have fun. And like, Stephen Covey taught us, it was all about getting the boulders in first, and then the rocks, then the gravel, then the sand, then the water. And man, if you let the world tell you what to do, it starts with the water and then it adds the sand and the rocks. It was such a beautiful metaphor that he taught us. And it was just the gift that keeps on giving. We certainly use that in our lives. But you get the boulders in, right? So you get, there's morning rituals that you do every day. You work out every day. We get adjusted every week. We have family dinner every night, right? So we go to church on Sunday. My parents come up on Sunday night to get adjusted. There's like structures in our life, and our family operates just beautifully inside that structure. And some people will say, well, that sounds just too rigid and I couldn't live like that. And then I just ask them, so how's it going so far? The way you've been doing it. I don't know. We have the most fun out of everybody that I know. I think there's so much freedom and structure.
You're so right. There's freedom and discipline. When we were younger, we really didn't know that.
No.
And we would fly by the seat of our pants, and we didn't have that discipline, and it led to arguments because we didn't know what to expect from one another, and there were no agreements about how we were going to live our lives. And so from moment to moment, day to day, week to week, things could change. And maybe what was okay yesterday is not okay today. And if we had children and we lived that way, I can only imagine how confused and maybe rebellious that, our children would be if we didn't have things set in stone the way that we do now. So I completely agree. So obviously you have to also lead by example. If you don't want to see your kids, playing games all the time or on their phones or whatever, we have to be cognizant of the things that we're doing on a daily basis from moment to moment. When we think they're even not paying attention, they are.
Well, one of the things that you have taught us is the coffee break for us. I would love for you to expand on that, both of you, like just how important that is. We've touched on it in other pillars, but I think it came from you guys. So I would love to hear you guys break that down a little bit, because I think this can go to whether you have a business or whether you don't have a business. I think it's essential. Like I think back with my mom and dad. My mom and dad's most powerful years were my dad would come home from work and she'd make him a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and they would sit at the table and they would talk. And I didn't know what that was back then. I had no clue what it was, but it was them engaging in the day, getting caught up what was happening in the world of his world and her world, what was going on with the kids and what was happening in his new business. And it became this very expected thing. I just knew a mom and dad would be at the table every night doing their thing. And then I look back at that and I think, I think the thing that kind of started to break apart was when they stopped doing that. Like that rhythm that you mentioned is such an important thing. And I reflect on that, and it was like things started to go sideways right at that point when they stopped doing that. So I would love to hear you explain a little bit of what that is and the importance of that, and how you manage that in your family and your business, and how you juggle those pieces inside that. I think that is something of intellectual that is just it's so important. I can't even express it.
All right, I'm going to take this one because this was birthed from scar tissue. Camilla and I, we've been together for 113 years.
You guys look so good.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's longer than you guys, but it's like.
Well, it's going on 30.
Go see.
Yeah.
Close.
Yeah.
What, 30 minutes?
Underwater.
No.
I'll tell you how long we've been together. I went through pictures the other day. I had to go back. I had to find me in diapers to not find her next to me. Weird. Am I not?
It's amazing because we've been through these seasons together, right? Yeah. So we had lives, believe it or not, we had lives before we were together, but we've been together most of our adult lives.
I basically taught him everything I know.
We all know that, Camilla. Okay.
You did. So, we went through, we met each other at school right away, and we went through school together. So all we were focused on was school, right? So we had at school, I ran a business while we were in school, but it was our relationship, it was school, what have you. And then we get out of school, we did our internship or an associateship, and then we opened our business. And then it was just head down, bum up, building the business for a solid 8 years. And frankly, we could get away with all the bad habits that you develop as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, whatever, because we're really only focused on one thing. So we had this really common passion and mission and purpose, and we were just excited about what was happening. And then we started having babies, and we started having kids, and we decided, hey, you know what? You go build that practice, and you run the team and keep that going. And I'm going to run the house and raise the kids, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle. And it was just a decision that we made, and it seemed to make a lot of sense. We were pretty, credit. I'll give us some credit in that we recognized that we had about a 5 or 6 year window where we thought we could get away with being wildly out of balance, when the kids wouldn't really notice, right? Because as long as mom was around, they were cool, and dad would catch up on the weekends. But by the time they were 5 or 6 years old, I knew they'd be looking for me, right? So that was the game plan. So we agreed to be wildly out of balance for a period of time. But what we found was, although we had our date nights, we had, Joe, date night. You had the structure where you're going to go out and have, a night of romance. And that was great. But as we got busier and our practice was busier and busier, what we found was with the children, there was no time for the two of us to exchange any life information at all, right? So I'd be getting home from the practice after being super busy and seeing a whole bunch of people, and she'd been with babies all day long. So now she's got an adult in the house, and what does she want to do? She wants to share and exchange and ask questions, right? And I'm like trying to find the nearest cave to crawl into. the last thing I want to do. So it was like the collision of two dysfunctional systems every night. And then, so I'd be like, can we just talk about it this weekend? Can we talk about it later or what have you? And not even just problems, just life. You guys know what I mean. And so that being said, it was like pillow talk turned into like talking about paying bills, traveling, things we needed to do for the house, things we needed to do for the kids, etc. Then it started spilling into date night. Joe, I'm sure you're like me. I want to get lucky on date night. So the last thing I want to do is have this meeting going on date night, right? So it is definitely doesn't put anybody in the mood. So, I said, this is really a struggle, and things started really breaking down with our communications. And it was just every minute was filled with talking about the minutia of life. And I'm like, well, what are we going to do here? Because our lives are only getting bigger and busier. So what we did was we looked at our practice, our business, and said, why is this going so well? And this is such a struggle. And I said, well, one thing I know we do is we have meetings, at work, and we could never run our practice like this. So why do we try to run our family like this? And so what we said was like, we need a meeting. So let's have a meeting. So we started this thing where we'd get a babysitter, 2.5 hours, so 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back, 2 hours at this meeting. We'd go to Starbucks. She'd get her latte and I'd get a tall black coffee, and we would just sit there and we would just hash out everything. I'd show up with my calendar, my laptop, and my list, and she'd do the same, and we were fully prepared. And that's where, we would get through everything that we needed to cover in life. And I knew my job at that point was to sit back and be present and be listening. I had to be listener, and she knew she had me. And the power of it was she had my undivided attention, which at that point in time was incredibly difficult to get. And I would just be available for those 2 hours. And honestly, it wasn't those 2 hours that really changed, everything. Or I should say, it wasn't just those 2 hours. It was how those 2 hours changed the other 166 hours of the week, right? It was how at all times she knew especially, that she had me. She was going to have me on that day, and she could just create a list and we could get through it at the coffee break. So we started calling it the coffee break, and how that protected all of our other downtime together. So if one of us needed to talk about something that was not urgent but important, we could look and be like, hey, can we bring that to coffee break? And be like, oh yeah, sorry. And it would just give us a place. It was like a pressure release valve to defer to that meeting. So right action, wrong time kind of thing. Where it's like, let's move it into the coffee break. And that just kind of freed us up to just enjoy being together, as opposed to feeling like every chance she had to speak to me, or I had a chance where there wasn't a kid around, it just didn't turn into a data exchange and a checklist review. And of course, when you have a coffee break regularly, date night gets much better, right? So date night doesn't degenerate into a meeting. So that's the coffee break.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's probably saved.
It's really a necessity. Yes. In fact, we used to do workshops at the office on the topic.
Yeah, I think there's hundreds of families now, maybe more, that are through coaching clients and through our organizations, different businesses, that we've shared that. And I know that we've gotten so much amazing feedback from that there's a lot of people that are enjoying the benefits of doing coffee breaks. So I hope that's a blessing to everybody listening to that.
Yeah, it's been a huge blessing for us in the sense that it's like, again, we don't have children, so we have a little bit of that freedom more than having the kids. So we would be able to do that, but it was still the same idea. Like we were two ships passing in the night, even though we're working in the same building and doing the same job, we were just passing each other. And she would always want to grab my attention. And I didn't have the bandwidth to grab the attention. And the more bandwidth I didn't have, the more she grabbed to get it. And then it became this like dog chasing tail kind of thing, right? It was just like this problem. And then it would just turn into some type of frustration, either from her end or my end, her saying, I need to solve this. And me being, I don't want to hear it. Like I just don't have time to hear it. Right. And it became this really dog chasing tail. And then once she kind of just drew a line in the sand and gave it like a home base, like, hey, this is home base. Like you can go and touch it and grab it. And this is where it's at. And we all know where to go. And I meet you at home base. Like it was just like this place we can
Very
go.
real. Yeah. And Joe, I don't want to be sexist, but I can speak, I think guy to guy here, I can speak for the men. I have zero experience being a woman. Can you imagine if we tried to run our practice like that, where there was no meetings and it was just like, hey, yeah, whenever you need anything, just interrupt me and ask me. Like just think about it. It seems so crazy that that's how we would, we're like, of course you wouldn't do that. I'm supposed to be focusing on patients. I'm supposed to do my best work. But at the same time, it's like, why do we disrespect our marriage or our parenting or our family dynamic in the same way, right? So it's like, don't leave it to chance. Bring some structure in there and have, some reverence for the peace that it brings in your home and in your marriage.
Yes, and I'd like to point out too that it's that by virtue of going outside of the home, outside of the work, the place of work, the office, what have you,
vital behavior,
to another place such as a coffee shop. Who doesn't like a coffee shop, right? It's relaxed. It's like low key, low budget, relaxed. You can, find a place with comfy chairs and ceramic mugs and like make it special.
Yeah. The modern professional cannot relax in their own home. You have to, you just have to go off site, and there's got to be a neutral ground where you can go. The kids aren't around. There's not the distraction of your computer. Is that like you got to put your phone aside. It's really there's a discipline, but it's when you do it right, it's so fruitful. Yeah,
it brings a different energy to it.
And I'll speak to this type of personality. So if someone's out there listening to this, it's like the thing I had a hard time with it was that like she would bring an issue or a problem or wanted an answer on something. And I would calculate that as I needed to solve it because I try to solve everything. And so when she would bring it to me and I didn't know how to solve it, so I would come back frustrated in that because I was like, I don't know how to solve that. And then I learned by doing it over and over again, she's not looking for a solution. She's just looking to get it out.
And for a conversation, let's take it, put it out on the table and let's discuss it and
and massage it and work it back and forth and see where it goes. And I always took it as like, I needed to solve it. So the solvers out there, you don't have to solve when you do these meetings, like don't get caught up in that. It's because I would take that and then I was like, I need to solve it. And then if I didn't know how to solve it, I would just turn it down. Right. And so it became like this downplay. And so that is a big deal for people because I know there's always one person in that relationship is that person. And usually the other person is on the other side of that. So I just wanted to clarify that because that's a big thing for people. And I struggled with that for a little bit and I had to finally figure that out.
Well, let me throw something else out there too. Intellectual maturity, emotional maturity, that happens from doing things like what some of us do. And we'll talk about that in just a second, like some of the things that we do in the morning, things we read or listen to. But this also takes you to a place where we both had to learn to stop and listen and learn how not to respond out of emotion, right? That's a big deal. Even if you took time aside to talk with one another, it can't be a battle. It's got to be a safe place.
Yeah, safe place is probably a great term for it. It's understanding that all couples are going to disagree. There's going to be discussions and arguments, but it's how you argue that matters, right? So it's just coming from this place of, being respectful and recognizing that we have a shared objective. Like, we want the same things. And it's just such a great exercise for couples to just regularly say that to each other, to be able to say, look, we both want the same thing, and then get to that common ground straight away and get it back to dialogue. I love a great book, Crucial Communications, is just such a
great book.
That's like required reading for anybody who runs a business or runs a life or runs a relationship. Or it's a great read, because it gives you that structure to be able to have that, take some of the emotional charge off of a conversation that can be difficult. I mean, Joe, I think you bring up a really good point around what do you talk about at a coffee break. And I know that there's probably people listening right now, like, they feel like they're allergic to something like this. Like, oh my gosh, last thing I need is to sit there and listen to my wife or my husband tell me all the ways I screwed up this week. And, we show up and this is the place where we have at it. It's just like, that's not what it is. I mean, just like you run a great meeting at work, that's not how you run a meeting with your team either, right? It's amazing how we're able to find so much grace and patience and compassion for the people that work for us, right? You got to be able to bring that back, that same, leadership style. You got to bring that back into your home, right? Into your marriage as well. So, we can talk about just like the usual things that would end up filling all the time for us to be connected. Like, whether you're buying deck furniture or you're making plans for flying out of town, and when are your flights? Are they Wednesday night or Thursday morning? Or, we've got dance recitals, we've got soccer tournaments, we've got all the practical stuff that happens on the day-to-day basis, where if you're not careful, that ends up making up 75% of your communications as a couple. And really, there's so much more that you should be talking about and connecting about, or maybe just enjoying a comfortable silence together and not just ripping through, your to-do list.
Yeah, we even, Joe one-upped it, and we created a Google document so that as the week goes on, we could put, like, we literally have things listed out, what are our goals and objectives? What are our wins? What are our, where do we need to work on? Things about business. This is our time that we also talk about business outside of our team meeting. Yep. And so we'll put even finances. We both grew up with financial stress in our families, and we learned very quickly that money is a bad thing. It goes against all things. You make money, these cause problems. So we had to learn our way through that. And so we make it very clear in each of our meetings where we stand, so we both feel comfortable and confident in the direction that we're going in. So if there are big decisions that we need to make, or we decided to make an investment, or we decided to hold back on something, we're just revisiting things that are important, things that we have to talk about as a couple and not struggle with. Everything does not have to be a struggle. We've been in both places, and not struggling is definitely better.
And you don't have to make a decision every time.
No.
Sometimes you have to table something. Sometimes there's an emotion around it, and you just need to cool it and let it marinate and stew on it for a week or so, and take it up again in the next meeting. I'm a person, I need to always think about it and feel about it. I don't make rash decisions.
Me too.
Yeah. And Stephen makes quick decisions, and many of them, and I just have to take my time. So we've learned that about each other.
Yes. Because as we know, couples, that's the thing that brought us together, the emotional connection, the things that are different about each of us that brought us together as a couple are also the things that could drive us apart if we don't know how to work that out.
True.
Yeah, that's magic sauce, what you just said there, Deb, is just recognizing that it's our differences that drive us crazy, but it's the differences that if you can just see that in each other, that's really what creates the yin and yang. That's what creates the, that together 1 + 1 = 11. If you recognize that we're each bringing different strengths and genius to the equation, it's really an important thing to note. Because if you don't look at it that way, and you're trying to just change each other or fix each other, it's just going to drive you nuts.
Absolutely.
I would kill me if I married me.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be lights out. There's no way I can marry me. There's no way.
One of him would be dead. That's no doubt about
That'd be awesome.
Easy peasy lemon.
My kids think you're great, Joe.
So, kind of in closing, I would love for you guys to tell me some of your routines or rituals, some of the things that you listen to or read that bring you to a place of maybe understanding yourself better or one another, or help you to go about your day and make it a better day rather than just rushing through it and running like your hair's on fire.
Oh, it's so much.
She's assuming that you're not running with your hair on fire.
Yes. Oh, never.
Chaos, Stephen.
I hit the ground running. I like to take the first few minutes, and I have my little Jesus Calling app on my phone. My phone is unfortunately my alarm clock, which is not a good thing because you can very easily get sucked into something electronically, but I try to keep it at that. And then it's, it's showtime to get everybody out the door, and with healthy lunch boxes and a belly full of happy, healthy food, vitamins, supplements, all that which is going to fuel them for the day. So that's really my immediate morning ritual.
Yeah, she has these kids. I think I used to say I don't think they have any idea how fortunate they are, but I know that they know how fortunate they are, that they've got a mom that loves them so much. And I think you guys grew up in a house like I did where food was love, but this is real love. This is like super nutritious foods, and we just it's amazing how she's made it her number one priority that these kids, they are going to get as much nutrition as they need for the entire day before they leave the house. And then she's going to send them packing with more for the rest of the day, which is extraordinary. And it is a military operation in the morning getting them out of the house. But, my job is to leave them laughing, right? So I want to make sure that they leave the house just laughing and happy. And that's really my role. She does the majority of the rest of the work.
And that's really a victory when your kids leave home, going off into the world happy. The happiness advantage. If you've read that book, you learn better. You can only learn in a state of joy and happiness, really.
Yeah.
So Stephen is a master at that.
So yeah, I have my morning rituals that, man, I'll tell you, this is like one of those things that I look back that I've been really consistent about it. So Joe, you've heard me say before in our CEO program that consistency is the new intensity. And that's something that, has paid dividends. And the fact that, a coach early on made a big impression on me. To master your life, you got to first master your morning. And that made so much sense to me. And I was wasting so much time in the morning that it just became about morning rituals. And I just look back, and this is absolutely one of the keys to success, whatever success we've enjoyed, is that I'm up and at it, and I get more done before 9 a.m. in the morning than most people will do all day. I know that to be true. I'm 4 hours into my day cranking by 9 a.m. and then I'm more available to be with, of service to everyone else. Like I've done my work, and I know I've done, whether it's, I always start, my morning with prayer, and I get in the book and I read something professional, and I'm journaling, and I do my checklists, do some type of stretch, movement, what have you, spend a little time with my dog, have at least 2, if not 3 coffees to fully caffeinate for the day. But I've cranked out most of my brain work, most of my creative work before 9 in the morning that I need to produce, whether that's, writing or creating video copy or whatever it happens to be. My most creative work is early in the day. And then I can just be present to work with others and help others throughout the day and be super productive all day long. And that's 7 days a week, honestly. It's 7 days a week. It's not a 5-day week. It's, and I love it. I love my work. So she's always pulling the reins in. Because, she'll tell me I work too much, which I agree. From the outside in, it might look like I work too much, but I love my work. So it's really, it'd be like being, you know, if I were a musician, it'd be like yelling at a musician because they play too much. It's like, it's in me, I got to do it. So I really, I feel blessed that I, you know, just like when I was 26 years as a chiropractor, it felt like every day I was doing exactly what God hardwired me to do, exactly every moment.
Yep.
And now being a coach and a consultant and running businesses that serve the chiropractic ecosystem, I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm hardwired to do. So twice in my life, what an extraordinary blessing. So morning rituals.
Your successes have not come by mistake, you guys. And I want you to know that all of the time and energy, effort, money that you've put into being better, to being better as individuals, as a couple, raising a great family and great businesses, they've created the ripple effect. We've seen that already. And so I just want to commend you guys, and just want you to know that we look up to you, and we love and appreciate you. And we thank you so much for being on this call with us tonight. And I hope everyone has gotten their pens and pencils out and taken some great notes tonight. And any questions, drop them on the feed and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
Yeah, it's been our pleasure, you guys. Really an honor to be asked, and you know, we love you guys. So anything you're involved in, we want to play too. So just awesome. And if you'd like, I can get you the PDF for the coffee break, which is that packet that I put together that you guys, I think, have got a copy of from UAC. You can feel free to share it with your listeners. So if anyone wants it, I'll send the PDF, and it's a guidebook to guide you through coffee breaks. Yeah. So at least to get you started, so you can feel like you have some level of guardrails to keep the meeting.
I love that.
And you know what, everybody, I will commit some classes to that too. I'll commit myself to teaching you guys, whether in person and or online. Yeah. I'll figure it out, and we'll work this out for anybody who's interested. So put your name in there. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you're interested. Make sure that we get in touch with you when the time comes. Thank you, everybody. Have a fabulous night, guys.
God bless. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. God bless.